Can you go around and just tell us about yourselves in the studio?
Sure. My name is Justin Hager. I'm the Communications Director for California State Assemblyman Mike Gatto. The Assemblyman represents the 43rd State Assembly District, which includes Hollywood, Silver Lake, Los Feliz, Glendale, Burbank, La Crescenta, La Cañada, Atwater Village. I think I've got them all. Oh, Montrose. We don't want to ever forget Montrose. My own personal background is I come from Wisconsin. I am a lifetime cyclist and someone who is very proud to have met Damien through work, but is now proud to say that he is a very close friend of mine, as is JJ and the LA County Bicycle Coalition.
And I'm JJ Hoffman. I'm the Events and Development Director for the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. I moved to Los Angeles in 1990, and I've always ridden a bike. I fell in love with this city on my bicycle, and but I was always astonished to feel like I was the only one, really. I felt like at the time that I was the only one that did it, and I thought everyone else was crazy. I started hanging out with the Bike Coalition in 2002, doing their river ride. I just participated, and I had such a great time. So I started volunteering for them, and then started making fun rides for them, like the ice cream rides and other tasty rides and spooky rides, and so then they asked me to do the river ride for them, and then sort of that's the rest is history.
Good. My name is Damien Kevitt. I am a survivor of a hit-and-run accident of gruesome details, which I'll get into very shortly, but I'm a native of Los Angeles, grew up here, went to school around Los Angeles, actually majored in marine biology at University of California at Santa Barbara, and I've been bicycling for many years, commuter bicycling, touring, and more recently getting into being an advocate as a bicyclist because of the unfortunate circumstances that I've had to go through and realize that I don't want someone else to have to experience that.
May I just say, despite his gruesome accident, Damien is still a very handsome young man for all the ladies out there. His wife wouldn't appreciate me saying that, but maybe she would.
Yeah, she'd go for that. That's totally fine. Well, my accident was about a year ago, February 17th. I was riding my bicycle with my wife in Griffith Park. And we were just a morning ride, going to go to have lunch in Griffith Park over at the LA Zoo, and on riding along the LA River Path, and came off Zoo Drive. For those of you who know where that all is, you can picture it, Zoo Drive, and we were right over the 5 freeway on the overpass, on the streets, and I stress on the streets because every now and then someone goes, "Why were you on the freeway?" I was struck on the streets by an individual in a light-colored minivan. And I ended up on the hood of his car and then fell down in front of his car, and he took off from that accident and dragged me nearly a quarter of a mile from the streets onto the 5 freeway with me underneath the car and being pinned underneath the car, attempting to get him to stop, but realizing that it was up to me to survive the accident and come out the other end because he was not stopping. He was only speeding up. And I did. I came out the other end with my right leg partially amputated by the accident, my left leg mangled very badly, broke over 20 bones, 10 ribs, shattered my right shoulder, ground down my rear end practically to the bone as I was being dragged on the freeway, down the freeway, and numerous other injuries. But basically the key thing is I survived, and it was one of the most intense things you could possibly go through. I mean, if anyone's ever been in a situation where they are realizing that they've got seconds to live or die, and then you'll know what I mean, because that's what it was. It was seconds, and probably a couple more seconds, and I would have been just literally a skid mark on the freeway. I wouldn't have been much more than that. But I survived. My wife, unfortunately, got to watch the entire thing and was the first person to find me. She rode her bike onto the freeway where I was laying on the freeway when I finally got out from the end of the car, and found me alive to her surprise and conscious talking, and amazingly, it's a funny thing because on one hand, you think how unlucky and how horrible, that must have been. On the other hand, I was super lucky. I mean, I don't know how many people can talk about going down the 5 freeway at 50 miles an hour for a quarter of a mile and live to tell about it, let alone be up and walking and riding my bicycle yet a few months later. So that was
Wow.
an incident I would not wish on my worst enemy.
Amazing. You were telling me that you were conscious throughout the entire thing and desperately pounding on the undercarriage of this car. And tell everybody what you said to your wife when she saw you.
I can't say the exact words on radio, but it was appropriate, I can assure you. But yeah, I was underneath, and I there was an exact point actually when I was on the on-ramp, and I could walk someone through what was happening moment by moment. I maintained enough consciousness throughout most of it that I can actually tell you the exact point where I was literally looking up, pounding on the underside of the car. I actually pounded on the exhaust pipe and burned my hands, and trying to figure out how to get free and realizing that I had seconds to live or die. And there was a very exact moment and thinking, I am not giving up. I am not leaving at this particular point in time. This is not my exit. You know what I mean? I've got more to do.
Do you recall what the reaction of the other motorists around you were? Did anybody stop? Were there other heroes in this story?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's quite possible I wouldn't be talking to you today if it weren't for those other heroes. There was a car that was actually saw the accident and had taken off after this driver when they realized it was a hit and run, and this driver was attempting to escape and was speeding up down the on-ramp to try to catch up to him, and luckily was far enough away from him that when I came out from the rear of this van that I was trapped underneath, they were able to stop fast enough, and they stopped and they parked their car in front of me to protect me from any other oncoming traffic, and opened their doors and put on their lights, and they just basically protected me, which prevented me from being a multiple roadkill type accident. And then immediately, as soon as I was on the freeway, my wife was the first person that found me, and I just I won't tell you the exact words, but she looked down at me, and I looked up at her, and I said, "This bleeping sucks." You know what I mean? And those were the best words she could have possibly have heard from me, because that meant I was alive. She thought for sure I hadn't survived through that accident. But immediately, within a minute or two, I had an off-duty emergency room doctor, Dr. Wasserman, I believe is his name, and I've actually contacted him since to thank him personally. And he just saw what happened, saw me come out from underneath the car, and immediately pulled over and came running up. And I remember his words, "I'm a doctor, I'm here to help." And within 30 seconds, an off-duty paramedic actually stopped and pulled over and said, "I'm a paramedic, I'm here to help." And so I had two highly trained emergency triage individuals, beside me, as well as my wife, who was amazingly calm considering what had just happened, and was helping, and they were taking care of me in those, critical first few moments before the paramedics arrived, and then were able to transport me off to LA County USC Hospital, where they have an excellent trauma unit, and were able to take care of me and ensure that I made it.
I want to take just a moment, to emphasize the importance of that car that did stop and protect you. We see the epidemic in LA of hit and runs continue with, just a couple days ago, another hit and run victim who was struck by not one car but two cars.
Yeah.
And that stunning footage that was on the news in the last couple nights. I think it's so important for people to recognize not only is there an imperative to stop and render aid when you hit somebody, but if you see someone who's hit, please stop and help, because I think you would agree that that's probably one of the primary reasons you're still standing here.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons I'm still here with, 1.5 legs to stand on. But if the person who, I had the collision with had stopped, and they didn't intend to hit me. I have no doubt about that. I don't think they were aiming for me or they were ill-willed when we collided. And I could even see from their viewpoint, maybe they didn't see me as well. It was, I could see how the accident occurred. If he had simply stopped, I would still have a leg, and I wouldn't have had 20 plus broken bones, and I wouldn't still be going through physical therapy, and I wouldn't have lost months of my life in a hospital, unable to move. I would have maybe had a few scratches, and that's a point of moral obligation that any citizen has in a society, is to render aid to someone who needs help, and especially if you are the cause, intentionally or unintentionally, of that accident, of that injury. That's a simple, logical responsibility of a normal, civilized individual.
What were those first few weeks like? Those first few days, few weeks, few months after the accident?
The first few days were hellacious. The amount of trauma to the body, amazingly, I've described some of the gruesomeness of the accident. Amazingly, because I was wearing a bicycle helmet, and I can't recommend bicycle helmets enough to anyone riding, I'm alive. I actually, if I had not been wearing a bicycle helmet, I probably would have been unconscious, and I would have been run over, undoubtedly. My right leg was run over and was crushed, and I lost my right leg. I would not have survived that accident. I would have been roadkill instantaneously as a result of his tires over my chest, body, head. But I got out of the way from that. But I amazingly survived with no head injuries, no neck injuries, no spinal cord injuries, no internal organ injuries. And that's largely because of some fast thinking that I was able to do because I was conscious. But those first few weeks were just hellacious. I mean, the emotional and the physical trauma combined were a bit rough, to putting it very mildly. Yet at the same time, it was within those first few days that I looked down at my leg and I was like, okay, you know what? I am getting back on my bicycle and I'm going to finish the ride.
I have to cut in here. This is Justin with Assemblyman Gatto's office, and we became involved very early in Damien's story. Within days, we had contacted the family. The Assemblyman took a very active interest in the story, and I had the pleasure of getting to know your mother very, very well during that period. And
she is an amazing person. I can't recommend my mother enough to anyone.
And I wasn't fortunate enough to meet you until several months after. Mm-hmm. But I will never forget, hearing the stories on the news and reading the stories in the newspaper of this just gruesome accident, and how terrible it must have been and how awful you must have felt. And then I'd talk to your mother and I'd ask how you were doing, and she would go, oh, he's got a smile on his face, and he's just, you just can't put his spirit down. That Damien, he wants to finish the ride that he started. He wants to organize for charity. He's already thinking big plans. And I'm like, huh? I don't get it.
I've been accused, not so maliciously, of being a hopeless optimist, and I've learned, before my accident, and still even after my accident, I've been a counselor at my church for many, many years, and so I've actually counseled other people through traumatic accidents and through traumatic incidents such as divorce and things like that. And one of the things I learned throughout all of that was the simplicity of setting future goals that one can accomplish to carry one through a rough spot. And that's just such a simple little stable thing. And it would literally, the first thing, as soon as I realized that I was alive and I was going to make it, and this was relatively speaking a setback, and I would be able to move forward from there, I was instantaneously going, good, how are we going to take this and how are we going to move this forward into something good?
JJ, how does that mesh with stories you hear from other hit-and-run victims and just from your knowledge with the Bicycle Coalition?
Damien is really one of a kind. We have, unfortunately, we've talked to other hit-and-run victims, and I know personally a few hit-and-run victims, and it's a very traumatic event. for people. Not only, I've met people who've had their heads cracked open and they've survived. But then it tells them wear a helmet. That's one thing that it's told them, and then it's also created advocates out of them. I know at least, I'd say 10 people personally who, after being struck by a car and not having aid rendered, it's made them want to help as well. Want to work on advocacy, just reaching out to other cyclists, making change happen on the ground, education to motorists. But sadly, some of these cyclists who've been through this, they're really scared. It's really difficult for them to get back on their bicycles.
Sure, yeah.
Because they just, they don't trust anymore. And I have a friend who, unfortunately, this has happened to him twice. And the second time it happened to him, it wasn't such a horrible incident. He really came out with minor injuries. But the emotional trauma, because this has happened to him twice now, the emotional trauma is too much for him. And he hasn't been back on his bicycle. He does intend to one day get back on his bicycle, but he's pretty shook up.
Understandably so. I've met a number of people now who have been victims of hit-and-run accidents, and it takes a strong will to get back, whether it's into a car or whether, get back on the street as a pedestrian. Hit-and-run accidents are not just a bicycle thing. That's actually a minority of the hit-and-run accidents are bicyclists. They cover all forms of transportation, and it takes a very strong person to be able to overcome those fears and those apprehensions and that trauma and move forward from it. It's not an easy thing. It wasn't easy for me, even though you both are very complimentary and make it sound like I'm some amazing person. But it's not easy. It's not an easy thing, and it does require a special sort of will.
That you've mentioned several times now that you wanted to finish the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that. What are your plans to finish the ride, Damien? As I say with a smile.
Oh,
and a
yeah,
smirk.
of course. Finish the ride. Well, it was simply I want to finish the ride. Finish the ride that I started. And it's simply just the idea. You're on a horse, you fall off the horse, you get back on the horse, you finish the ride. It's just that's what you do. And that's what I've grown up with is those sort of moral values of, you don't take something and then just run away from it. You have to get back and you confront whatever you've run into and you move forward. And it's grown. It's become its own, living, breathing creature. And it's actually become a charity bicycle ride benefiting Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition, which I cannot say enough about as an incredible organization. And Challenge Athletes Foundation, which is another incredible charity. And it's literally, I am literally finishing the ride that I started and never finished a year ago. And except I'm doing it this time with 1,000 other bicyclists joining me.
Yeah, with hundreds of your new closest friends.
Yeah. And the purpose of it, besides just being an awesome, fun time with, lots of other bicyclists and, entertainment and things like that, the purpose of it really is to both highlight bicycle safety and really raise awareness of everyone in Los Angeles about the epidemic of hit-and-run accidents, and to use that as a vehicle for change on that subject. And, supporting legislation like, for instance, what Assemblyman Gatto has proposed, AB 1532, which is a very important bill that needs to move through the lines. And but it in itself is a first step in terms of handling, stemming the tide of hit-and-run accidents that, up until this year, including this year, is just continuing to increase. It's not getting better. It's per the LAPD's own report just a few months ago, the number of hit-and-run accidents and injuries and deaths as a result of that is greater than all of the injuries and deaths as a result of DUI. So we're no longer looking at DUI as being the major factor in terms of what's killing people on the streets. It's now hit and run.
Yeah, my understanding of that too is the proportion of hit and runs in LA. It's not simply a matter of there are more hit and runs because there are more drivers, but I believe the LAPD's own statistics showed something in the realm of it was either 43 or 48% of all accidents in Los Angeles are hit and runs, which compares to only 11% as the national average of percentage.
Yeah, that was actually an investigative piece that was done by a journalist, and actually that was based off of an individual who I got to meet just the other day, who his son was killed in a hit-and-run accident, and he did a lot of that work, and then a journalist actually picked up that work and did some more investigating against the numbers and found the number that 48% of all accidents, and this was in the year 2009, and it's only gotten worse, so I can't imagine what the percentage is now, are hit-and-run accidents, and that's extremely disproportionate to the number of hit-and-run accidents, or the percentage of hit-and-run accidents in the rest of the country, that is, which is about 11% of the average. It's not even comparable, and that's by far, from anything that we can tell, is by far the worst of any city in the U.S. And that's just, I don't know. I don't know about anyone else's viewpoint on that, but I think it's gross. It's not civilization. It's just a point of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. How do you see Finish the Ride helping to address this situation? I mean, we're going to be talking a bit more about the legislation in a bit. I think we're going to try to bring JJ into the conversation a bit more to talk about what the Bicycle Coalition is doing on this front, as well as a number of other efforts. For example, from Councilmember Tom LaBonge, who has been extremely, extremely helpful. But where do you see Finish the Ride's role in this? And can you tell us some of the details about the actual logistical details about Finish the Ride?
Finish the Ride is part of a multifaceted strategy. And it really much, I'm not the first person that's working on this area, nor will I be the last person. I am nearly another drummer that is beating the drums on this subject in outrage, really at what's going on. And I may be the loudest drummer, I may be the most effective at this point in time, but it's the combined voice of so many people that are just starting to go, that's enough. And Finish the Ride is really taking all of those voices and putting them together in one venue, and including media and including, important people like Councilman Tom LaBonge and State Assemblyman Mike Gatto and Councilman Mitch O'Farrell and others who definitely see this as a growing problem that needs to be addressed. And it includes things such as petition drives. It includes things such as media attention on the subject, and it includes just the sheer number of people. I mean, Finish the Ride is going to be a massive number of people there, both having a great time but also expressing their interest in this subject as a problem that needs to be addressed.
How many are you anticipating?
On the low side, we're figuring low side 700. I'd like to have 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what is the planned route for the ride? What's the dates, times? We might as well get those thrown out at least once before we get the first.
April 27th. It's going from Hollywood. It's going basically from my church in Hollywood, where I've been working and where I basically started my ride a while ago. And when I actually had my accident, I started right from there, and leaving there, going through Los Angeles to Riverside Drive onto Griffith Park, and ending at the Autry Museum. And there's 3 rides total. For those who want to have just a short, fun ride, anyone can do this fun ride. It's 6 miles. Pretty much if you have 2 legs, or in my case, a leg and a half, you can do this fun ride.
Great for families.
Yes, it's a
the family.
Family-oriented ride. Kids can come. In fact, kids from under the age of 14 under are free. So, and you can come and spend the day at the Autry Museum or the LA Zoo, and there's going to be bike valet there to take care of your bike so that you can know that your bikes are safe. There's going to be food. There's going to be live entertainment. We've got this great band, the Happiness Swing Band. They're going to be alive. I think it's like a 6-piece brass, got brass and bass and, playing swing and live pop music and things like that. And we've got some incredible acts actually playing there, a group called Limitless, which if you ever get a chance, check it out on YouTube. They're quite a little act going on there. I'll let you surprise you as to what all that is. And there's 2 other rides. There's a 12-mile ride and there's a 23-mile ride, which the 23-mile ride, don't let it fool you, is a 2,000-foot elevation gain. We call it the leg burn ride, and pretty much any serious cyclist is going to have fun and with that particular ride. 12-mile ride's a great ride. It's going to be, it's kind of in between everything. So if you like bicycling and you want to get out there and get a good sweat up going, you can do the 12-mile ride. If you don't want to, really work your muscles there on the 23-mile ride. And they all end at the Autry Museum, where we're having a whole expo, bicycle safety expo with a lot of vendors, free stuff, raffles, things like that. So it's going to be a great time.
And may I say, Damien's designed the nicest jersey I've ever seen. And that's saying a lot.
Yeah, JJ's been through a lot of jerseys. And, my designer, Ron Pereira, has done an incredible job as a designer, and he's designed a lot of the promo, but he created this awesome jersey. So for those bicycle enthusiasts who collect jerseys as part of their activities of doing bicycling and rides and stuff like that, this jersey is going to blow you away. You've never seen anything like it.
It's true.
Well, and I will say I'm actually using the 23-mile ride as a training ground for the LA River Ride Century, which we will probably talk about a little bit in a bit. But I'm very excited that you've provided these options to make it a very family-friendly venue, while also providing options for more serious and seasoned cyclists to get a leg burn in, as you would say.
That's right, and it is a police escorted ride. So on the streets of Los Angeles, it's very safe. There's not going to be cars you're fighting with or anything like that. It's going to be everyone there with police escort. So it's a very safe ride for all types of people, young and old.
Well, that is a great segue. My understanding is that the police escort has been created and logistically planned with an immense amount of support from Councilmember Tom LaBonge and his office. They have a wonderful staff over there. And you've mentioned Assemblymember Mike Gatto a couple times, who will be joining us on the air in just a few minutes. What can you tell me about the political reaction in the immediate aftermath? Going back to your story and your journey, how did you find local officials, the local police? What was the sort of government response to this?
In terms of the ride, or in terms of my accident?
Your accident.
My accident originally, it was very fortuitous, timing-wise, because there are a few people that have started to in the government, specifically State Assemblyman Mike Gatto, who already saw this problem and knew that it needed to be addressed, and had just introduced legislation at the time regarding extending the statute of limitations of hit and run accidents. And obviously, I was thrust into this situation unwillingly, but once you're there, you can't turn your back on it in terms of the problem of hit and run accidents in Southern California. And we immediately teamed up with your office to do something about it. It's been a bit of an uphill battle. It's not been an easy thing to get everyone's attention onto this particular subject. Originally, it's just a few people. It's, State Assemblyman Mike Gatto and a handful of others that have been willing to really stick their neck out as, this is something that I want to address as a growing problem. And as you've seen more and more of this stuff happening on the news, and as more and more people have become victims of it, and unfortunately, I don't want to have a growing mass of people saying we don't want hit-and-run accidents because they're all missing legs like me, or their family members are dead. That's not the way to recruit people into this, struggle. It's, I want people who are not affected by this to stand up and say, hey, we don't think this is okay. But as that mass of people has increased, there have been more politicians and more government officials who have started to look at this as a real situation. Embarrassingly, and I'm just going to state the facts, it really took a lot of effort to even get to the point where the LAPD was even willing to issue a report saying that there are some facts and figures. They were not tracking the facts and figures of hit-and-run accidents up until that particular point in time. And even now, they're just now starting to work out how to track hit-and-run accidents. Yet we have gross figures like 48% of all accidents being hit and run, and no one even willing to even, really just categorize what types and where does it come from, and to start addressing the problem from a statistical viewpoint.
I mean, I should say, from my experience working with Assemblyman Gatto's office, we got involved initially because of this legislation that you mentioned. It was AB 184 last year that extended the statute of limitations on hit and runs from 3 to 6 years. It doubled the amount of time that police have to investigate and prosecutors have to prosecute these hit and run offenders. And I'm very proud to say that despite some presumably long odds going into it, that bill did pass both houses of the legislature, and we were very pleased to see it signed by Governor Brown last year. But my involvement personally in this story really was non-legislative. I mean, we came out to support you just as someone who lived in our district, who was a constituent, and the accident occurred just blocks from our district office in Burbank.
Yeah.
And so, myself and the district director, Jason Insulaco, just a couple weeks after you'd been hit, there were still no leads. There was this vague description of a light-colored van. And so we set out to do a canvassing in the soccer fields in the area, just as citizens, as neighbors, not even as representatives of Mike Gatto. And I think while in the end nothing came of that, that was a really inspirational moment for me personally to see the community come together. I mean, we organized that canvassing event about a day before it happened. And yet, every major news network was there. The LA County Bicycle Coalition got their volunteers out there. Don Ward and the Midnight Riders and Wolfpack Hustle were there to support. There were so many different groups and individuals that came together. Churches sent people. Yeah. I think we ended up with about 60 volunteers out there that day, and every news network in the city, both English and Spanish speaking, to cover the story and try to get the word out. And that really gave me a lot of hope and faith moving forward.
Damien's case was so horrific. I know for us in the bicycling community, we rallied. But even years before Damien's accident, the bicycle community has rallied time and time again over different accidents and incidents like these, and it has felt really frustrating as we gather up all of our collective energy, go down to these transportation meetings and hearings, and get the press to come, and we and talk about these cases, specific cases. Like I don't want to say anybody's case like by name, but we've. It just feels like now. We're finally getting somewhere, because it's been tough for us to just do all this case by case by case and feel like every time we do it, we get somewhere with just the one person's case, and then it just goes back to where we started. And as an organization, a coalition who advocates for improved bicycling environment. How are we going to make any change? Or we're just going to be fighting the same battle over and over and over again. Yeah,
and that's something that as I was going through all of this, and looking at what's happened with hit-and-run accidents and what's happened in the past, I really realized that there needs to be a collective voice. Mm-hmm. And until you have that collective voice of the citizens together standing up and saying that this is not something that we're okay with, and we want, safe streets to grow up on, to exercise on, to live on. We don't want to be in fear of, walking across the street in a crosswalk and being mowed over and someone just running off and, dragging us underneath the car or something like that, like what happened just a few days ago. Unless that collective voice is together, rising up, there's not going to be any significant change, because it really is, and it is a democracy, and no matter its faults and its, various different things that may not be correct about it or should be changed for the better, the point is it still works from the viewpoint of a collective voice making a difference and using your representatives and using your people.
We are joined on the air now by California State Assemblyman Mike Gatto, a man that I call not only my friend but also my boss. And I'm going to introduce him by stealing a little piece from Tim Conway Jr. by welcoming the big cat to the air. Assemblyman Gatto, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing great, Justin, and thank you for that nice introduction.
You are most welcome. We've been speaking with Damian Kevitt, who you know, and JJ, who is from the LA County Bicycle Coalition. And we've been talking a bit about Damian's case in particular, Finish the Ride, his campaign to help raise awareness of hit and runs while also raising some funding for challenged athletes and the Bicycle Coalition. And we were just discussing a little bit about your legislation last year and getting ready to move into your legislation this year. So I'm wondering if you could start by giving us a bit of background on your legislation last year, AB 184, and what inspired you to introduce legislation regarding hit and runs, and what happened with that bill.
Well, sure. So first of all, the inspiration question is easiest to answer because two individuals who I'm on the air with right now were really the inspiration for both of these pieces of legislation, and I just want to start by saying, it's an honor to be here with you guys. Really, I am in awe of your activism and all the stuff that you've done to raise the awareness on this issue, which is really important.
Thank you.
Basically, there's a new concept, I think, emerging in the law that certain people who use the road are so-called vulnerable road users. And I think those people include, anybody with human tissue and probably a lot of animals as well, but really, cyclists, pedestrians, all the people who we're trying to encourage to use our roads because it's good for the environment and it's good for our health. And the problem is that, for whatever reason, Southern California has a horrible problem with hit and runs, and that can be very, very problematic, of course, if you're in a regular vehicle, but it's even more problematic if you're a so-called vulnerable user. If you are riding your bike down a dark, quiet road, and believe it or not, in Los Angeles there still are dark, quiet roads, and somebody hits you.
We found one tonight trying to get into the studio, actually.
I don't doubt it. But, somebody hits you, and they leave you on the side of the road. In many cases, that person who hits you is the quickest and really sometimes the only person who can get help for you. And you already think, let's be honest, what bad people these are that they would do that. But, my job, of course, as a lawmaker is to make sure that the laws reflect our values and that if there is a gap between our values and the law, that we do something to correct it. And so last year's legislation, AB 184, it simply raised the statute of limitations for prosecuting a hit and run. Too often somebody can just wind down the clock. They can make sure that they evade being caught for a certain number of years. And if they do, there's nothing that prosecutors can do. And there are real-life examples of this. Of course, there was a young lady down in the South Bay portion of Los Angeles who was a victim of a hit-and-run accident. Her parents, and in many cases, police resources are scarce. It's up to the victims. It's up to us to try to find the perpetrator. And her parents did what all parents do. They went out and they pounded the pavement. They put up reward signs. And finally, I think it was a tip, they were able to identify who had hit their daughter, and but the problem is the statute of limitations had run, and so they were not able to obtain any justice whatsoever. So that's what AB 184 did. And then this year, in response to a lot of comments that people said to us that the penalties were not commensurate with the crime, we introduced a different piece of legislation, and that one would change the penalties for hit-and-run accidents. I'm happy to talk about it if I haven't already monopolized too much time at this point already.
No, I think we would love to hear more about what this legislation does, and I think in particular how it changes the status quo today. Because obviously, as we've been discussing for the last hour, the status quo needs to change. There are serious problems. LA is facing a serious crisis and what I'm calling an epidemic.
And it really is an epidemic at this point. The proportions are of epidemic proportion.
Yeah. It absolutely needs to change, and I'll tell you why. Most crimes when it comes time to prosecute you, most crimes are, they could judge your mindset. They could judge very objective criteria. Grand theft. Did you intend to steal a whole lot of money? Well, that's grand theft. But with hit and run, it's really interesting because right now, again, you go back to the image I painted. You're driving home. It's a quiet road. You hit a cyclist and you send him off into a spin. At that moment, you don't know if that person is alive or dead. You don't know if that person is seriously injured or maybe just got scraped. But the weird thing is the law will prosecute you based on how bad that person's injuries end up being. So,
so there are different penalties based upon the injury of the victim, not the actual crime of hitting and running?
Exactly. And our point is simple. You don't know when you hit somebody. Mm-hmm. You don't know how serious their injuries are. You need to stop. Now, obviously, in the case of Damien, that guy knew darn well. But in a lot of these cases, and some of the most high-profile ones, the DAs have charged people with even though someone's life was ruined and they were in the hospital for a long time, and they had serious psychological damage and a fear of going back on the road and all sorts of horrible things. If really all that ended up happening is you got some scrapes and maybe a broken bone, and the DA says, well, it doesn't really rise to the level of, well, at that moment, that person who perpetrated that crime will not face any serious penalties. And so our new proposal would simply say, if you hit anything with a human being, a car with a human being in it, a bicycle with a human being on it, a pedestrian, if you don't stop, you lose your license for 6 months, and and possibly much more. But we want to send a message to people that, by all means, if you hit somebody, stop. Make sure they're okay. Call the ambulance. We're trying to prevent these crimes, not just punish the people, although we want to punish them as well.
Are you finding that proposal is, getting a lot of support in Sacramento, a lot of opposition, or even down here in L.A.? What's the feedback you've gotten thus far?
Well, the feedback in L.A. has been great, and that's mostly because I think people here in Los Angeles realize that this has reached epidemic proportions, as you said. In Sacramento, nothing is easy. There are people, who sit on the relative public safety committees in both the Senate and the lower house, the Assembly, who feel like there are probably too many new crimes and our jails are too full. And those are valid sentiments, and believe me, we get it. We don't want to, I've never been one of those people who believe that you should just lock people up and throw away the key and have no hope for redemption. But this is really a different matter. I mean, these are real freaky, I don't want to call them loopholes, but there are real significant vacuums in the law right now where, again, it's just so goofy. You can hit somebody and have no idea how they are. You could have no sense of their safety. You could not have even done the decent thing, which is call 911 for the guy. And you will be a judge. Well, if you happen to be right and the person was okay, you'll just get a slap on the wrist. And if that person happened to die because you didn't get medical help, well, then it's another story. But I just think that it shouldn't be like that. The law should incentivize people to stop. And so, we're going off that common sense principle, and we're trying to get it through the relative committees. But it's harder than one would think because, we already have an overcrowding problem at our jails, and there's people who are very hostile to this type of thing. And we point out that this doesn't necessarily fill up our jails anymore. It just requires in people being taken off the road and losing their license if they commit a crime this heinous.
It would seem to be common sense that if you can't control your vehicle and stop it when you hit somebody, that you probably shouldn't be driving it.
It's simply a responsibility level of anyone who's on the road is to take responsibility for their fellow citizens. And if you don't have enough common sense to take that responsibility, then you shouldn't be on the road. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and you raise a very good point in terms of personal responsibility, and driving, of course, as everyone knows, is a privilege. It's not a right. And the way that drunk driving, the way that we were finally able to make inroads with drunk driving in the 70s and 80s, was with campaigns just like this. I mean, it's at my town corny, but Mothers Against Drunk Driving started with a group that reminds me a lot of you guys. I mean, this was just real people who had experienced a tragedy like this, who felt very vulnerable, and they got laws to change. And now the message, I don't know about you guys, but the message that has permeated the psyche of most of my friends and acquaintances is, it's not worth it. Don't drink and drive. You're going to go through a whole lot of hassle. You're going to lose your license. You're not going to be able to get to work. You're going to have lawyers' fees. And we have rightfully made it as difficult as it should be if someone, like you said, is so careless that they get behind the wheel of a deadly weapon, which is a car, and they inflict this type of injury on their fellow citizens. And that message has gotten out. But for whatever reason on hit and runs, it has not gotten out. And so we have to do things. We have to try to change the law. And we have to do things like finish the ride. We have to try to bring awareness to it.
Now, you mentioned that it's not always easy to get things through in Sacramento, to get new laws passed, particularly when they increase penalties. One of our themes of the conversation today is how it's really been remarkable in the aftermath of Damien's riot, of Damien's accident, to see the number of different stakeholders come together, to see state offices like yourself, individuals like Damien, nonprofit and community organizations like the LA County Bicycle Coalition, city-level government like Councilmember LaBonge's office and Councilman O'Farrell's office, really coming together and pulling together to try to make something happen. So I guess my question is, what can we do? What can the other folks sitting in this room and those listening on the air do to help get this legislation through?
Well, of course, it would always be great to make your opinions be known, to reach out, not necessarily to people who you think already are supporting it, although that helps too, but it would really help to reach out to other members of the relevant Public Safety Committee in the Assembly and let them know that this bill means a lot to you. Tom Amiano, really great guy. He's the chairman of the committee. He's from San Francisco, but, I think it could help to reach out to him and to let him know that this means a lot. San Francisco is a very different place from Los Angeles. They've had their problems, but they haven't been, necessarily as big as the ones we're aware of down here. And if you go to asm.ca.gov/Amiano, which is AMMIANO, you'll find ways to contact him and let him know how much this means to you. Reggie Jones Sawyer is also on the committee. He's a great guy, represents South Los Angeles, letting him know that this means a lot to you. Because ultimately, it's my job to get this through the legislature, but nothing is more powerful than real people coming forward and talking about their personal experiences. And so all help is so much appreciated. And if you just want to send us, if it's easier to contact my office and let us know how you feel, we can pass it on as well. Of course, my website is either mikegatto.com or asm.ca.gov/Gatto.
Wonderful. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I'm particularly curious, as both your staff member and, as I mentioned before, sort of a friend who looks up to you as a bit of a role model. You have now had two years in a row where you have taken direct action to address the hit-and-run epidemic in Los Angeles and across the state of California. Is there a larger message you would like the people listening in tonight to hear, or anything else you'd like to add?
It is that activism really does matter. I would hope that everybody listening considers themselves an activist in some way, shape, or form. I've already stated how much I admire all three of you guys and the work that you've done. But you know what? Getting involved really can change laws. It sounds so corny. It sounds, I don't know how it sounds, but the bottom line is it's true. I mean, I respect you guys. I respect the work you've done. You have raised more awareness on this issue than so much. And, again, this might sound corny too, but Damien, you went through a really, really terrible experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I would hope that there's a lot of other people out there who will not have to go through that experience because of the work that has been done by people right here. And I really appreciate it, just from the bottom of my heart. This stuff is impossible to do without grassroots support, and you guys are all my heroes. So thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Assemblymember Mike Gatto, the Assemblyman representing California's 43rd State Assembly District. That's not good. I'm going to get yelled at for that at work. California's 43rd State Assembly District, Assemblyman Mike Gatto. Thank you for joining us on the air tonight.
Great talking to you.
Damien, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was, the tremendous outpouring of support that you received from the community in the immediate aftermath of your accident. You mentioned the incredible treatment that you got at USC, yes?
LA County USC Hospital, yeah. I have to say this is going to be a bit of a shout out for some people who have really gone out of their way to help me. I received some of the best care that I could possibly imagine at LA County USC Hospital, their trauma unit. I've talked with the doctors during and after since my accident, and they themselves, these are world-class physicians, and they themselves said if they were ever in a traumatic accident, they would want to go to the trauma unit at LA County USC Hospital, and I understand why. It was really an amazing team effort. I rolled in there, and my right foot was gone, basically partially amputated in the accident, and my left foot was so badly shredded that from all normal medical procedures, I shouldn't have kept that left foot, and they, at my insistence, really worked and went above and beyond the call of duty to try to save it, and they did. It was saved, and it was very much a team activity from many different physicians. I probably had a team of about 40 different physicians, surgeons, and then I transferred from there after being in the hospital for about 3 months there. I transferred over to Rancho Los Amigos National Rehabilitation Center, which surprisingly is one of the top 10 physical therapy rehabilitation hospitals in the country, and it's right here in LA County. And they are really the state of the art in terms of physical therapy. And I rolled into there, and I literally couldn't sit up in bed, and within a week or so I was standing, and within a few weeks after that I was walking, and I literally walked out of that hospital. And whereas just a few months before, I couldn't even think about getting up in bed or moving a single bone because it was so excruciatingly painful, and I walked out of there, and their physical.
As I recall, you had originally given me a timeline of finishing the ride and getting back on a bike, at least a year after the accident was what the doctors had said. It's what your mother told me. And then I got a call in October, I think, saying, so we're thinking we might want to do the ride around Christmas time. I'm like, no, just no, that's not happening. But it really was incredible, the treatment and the speed with which you were able to bounce back. And I say this for the listeners out there, you can't see this, but Damien at one point while sharing that story put his hand on the table, and there's a very clear skin graft on his arm and his hand, and it's incredibly powerful to see firsthand what the damage that this vehicle did to you, and just the true inhumanity that this person showed by driving off. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you had the best medical care. I'm proud to say that Assemblyman Gatto's team, dove in there and was there to try to support your family and to apprehend this victim.
Yeah.
My understanding is Councilmember Tom LaBonge also became involved very early. What was his involvement?
I can't thank him enough. He's actually he's become a close friend at this point of the family, and finished the ride to the hilt. His whole office has. But he stepped up almost immediately and made sure there was a $25,000 reward issued for any information leading to the arrest of the individual that hit me and ran off and perpetrated this crime. And he was out there, within a week or so of the accident, when we realized that we had, run out of immediate fresh leads and were starting to have to dig and search. And he was out there with my family, and I believe you were there also, making it well known to all of the media that this was not something that we were going to tolerate, and that the city of Los Angeles was sponsoring a $25,000 reward for the guy's arrest.
Yes. JJ, you and I were talking earlier, and this brings me to sort of one of the final points I wanted to bring up on the program, which had to do with the incredible, almost just inspirational bringing together of various groups around Los Angeles, around the county, and even to the state level. And we were joking earlier, calling it the Fellowship of the Ring with regards to hit and run. But, can you imagine a year ago, before Damien's accident, seeing a state assembly member, 2 city council members, numerous community organizations, including cycling advocacy groups and pedestrian advocacy groups, all coming together to sit at the same table and really work on this issue in a concerted way?
It's so gratifying because I've just seen, for years and years, I've been with the coalition and been an activist now, like for 10 years. And I've seen us on the steps of City Hall with all those kids who got hit on out in Culver City with their injuries, with press. We've led rides with press down to City Council after other people have been hit. And it just has always felt like everyone nods and shakes their head and goes, yeah, that was terrible. Okay, bye-bye, and then that's it. And this just feels for the first time like something's going to happen. I just know it. I can feel it. And in conjunction with Finish the Ride, we are writing a petition for everyone to sign that would support the legislation of the state level that we've just discussed, and also at the city level to encourage the city to investigate, add more resources so that they can investigate hit and runs and bring these people to justice and prosecute them properly.
Now, you've been involved in this for quite a while with the Bicycle Coalition, and you say this is one of the first times that it feels like something might actually come of it.
Yeah.
What else is the Bicycle Coalition doing to continue the momentum discussing, hit and run accidents and the greater need for bicycle safety and bicycle infrastructure and pedestrian safety and infrastructure here in the city?
Well, one of the things that we're the only organization that has that does these. We've been collecting data biannually with our bike counts, and the city nobody can do this, so we get an army of volunteers, 500 people out there at intersections all across the county, and LA County is enormous. Sitting there just ticking pedestrians, cyclists, so we can identify where people are biking, where people are walking, whether or not they're biking on the sidewalk, or whether they're biking with a helmet or not. We're really trying to collect the data for the city, because that's going to help us as we put bike lanes down on the streets. And this is a completely volunteer effort when we do these things. So you can imagine it takes a lot of our resources. And the work that we do needs to be supported, of course, by members and other, sponsors, et cetera.
Like KPFK, may I add, yes. Member-sponsored, member-supported.
Exactly. So that's one of the things that we've done. We have an education department, and we're teaching people confident city cycling. And one of the first things that you need to learn as a cyclist on the city streets is you need to be visible and predictable. That's just the first thing that people learn, and that I would say you have to know being out there on the streets. Be visible, be predictable, because you are with a flow of traffic. But yeah, we have these confident city cycling classes, Traffic Skills 101. We have classes all the way up to becoming teaching you how to be an instructor as well of other cyclists. So with that program, of course, we're hoping to create cyclists who are less likely to get into an accident because they're seen and they understand the rules of the road, and also less likely to get cited. Let's be honest. And again, that education department, it's not funded by anything in particular. We need members. We need members to fund these things. So if you are not a member of LA County Bike Coalition, I really urge you to become a member. It's only $35 for a year. That's just outrageous if you ask me. I think it's a bargain. And of course, your membership gets you discounts at bike shops and all over the county. We've got a lot of local chapters that we support, like Walk Bike Glendale and Santa Monica Spoke. We've got 10 chapters throughout LA County, and we're looking to add more. We also, our mission is to make LA healthy, safe, and fun for cycling. And we also bring the fun. We create fun events like the river ride.
River ride, bike prom. All you guys have definitely know how to party with
Sounds as
bicycles.
though you've been to a few of these events.
Oh, they're a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, JJ is one of the more creative event producers that I've seen, and they have a number of events. I mean, everything from for the serious cyclists, like LA River Ride, which is just a great event. Finish the Ride, which, LA County Bicycle Coalition is very much devoting a lot of energy and resources into helping to put that on. And many other events that I've seen, constantly just community-based events that are just a blast. They're just a blast to be at.
Thank you. Yeah, our Sunday Fun Day rides, which are free to our members, happen the first Sunday of every month. And they run the gamut. They really do. Architecture rides, food rides, historical rides. They're fun.
Well, we are just about out of time, but I do want to make sure to mention once again, Finish the Ride. Mm-hmm. We are here with Damien Kevitt, who was the victim of a tragic hit and run last year that could have been more tragic, and he was able to walk away one leg less, but with more spirit than any person I've ever had the pleasure of encountering in my life.
I like to say they can amputate the leg, they can't amputate the spirit.
He has put together Finish the
God.
Ride. Damien has put together Finish the Ride, working with the LA County Bicycle Coalition and the Challenge Athletes Foundation, along with Councilmember Tom LaBonge, Councilmember Mitchell Farrell, and the Office of California State Assembly Member Mike Gatto. Finish the Ride will be taking place on April 27th. You can find more information about Finish the Ride at finishtheride.org. Damien, is there anything else you'd like to add before we leave?
There's a couple of other things. Finish the Ride, as I mentioned earlier, it's part of a movement. If you read the website and if you go on the Facebook page, you'll see it's not just a ride. It's part of a movement. And when you're joining that movement, you're becoming part of the solution on hit and run accidents and bicycle safety in general. But part of that movement is March 28th. We are doing a candlelight vigil with LA Critical Mass Bike Ride. We're going to do a candlelight vigil for all hit and run victims. And this is actually part of a whole nationwide movement where we're actually highlighting hit and run across the entire nation. So if you want to be part of a great ride there, it's a free ride, and be part of that. If you can't ride, just join us for the Candlelight Vigil. That'll be posted on their website or on Facebook page for Finish the Ride. You can go there. And that's just going to be a fun, easy activity where anyone can join us and just come out there and be part of that. And there's going to be a lot of media there, and we're going to raise a lot of attention for that subject in general. I do want to say one thing, which is, I've looked at the subject of hit and run accidents, obviously from all angles, from both sitting down, looking up, laying down, looking at it from above. More angles.
That is a very morbid pun. Very, very morbid pun.
More angles than most people get to look at a subject of hit and runs. And I really have to say that hit and runs is really really a symptom of, from my viewpoint, of a growing moral decay in society. Because when you have an accident, we're now having to do legislation to actually stem the tide of hit and run accidents. And that's a necessary thing at this particular point in time. But it's also common sense to stop and care for your fellow man. And for the percentage of people who don't stop to be that high, that just indicates that moral values in society in general have generally, gone out the door. And those moral values, are anything, from your church, your commandments, it doesn't matter what religion or Boy Scouts or whether it's, the way to happiness and, moral values from that angle. The point is, moral values are a basic of society, and when you have people who don't understand their basic responsibilities and basic moral values in society, you get things like an epidemic of hit-and-run accidents. And I'm addressing this particular one aspect, but it really does need to be looked at from all angles in terms of, how do you actually start putting moral values back into society? And that's an important thing.
Well, thank you very much. That was Damien Kevitt, who is the founder of Finish the Ride and a survivor of a gruesome hit-and-run accident last year, who is now taking his story on the road to raise awareness for hit-and-run victims in LA and across California and around the world. We're also joined today by J.J. Hoffman from the LA County Bicycle Coalition. We were joined earlier by Assemblymember Mike Gatto, the Assemblyman for the 43rd State Assembly District, who is here to talk about AB 1532. And my name is Justin Hager. I'm the Press Deputy and Communications Director for Assemblymember Mike Gatto. Thank you to KFBK for allowing us to have the studio space today and to have this conversation. And thank you to all of you for listening in.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bike Talk. If you want to hear more, go to kpfk.org, navigate to Programs, and choose Bike Talk. On the Bike Talk page, click on the Archives link to play or download shows posted in the last 4 months. Go to biketalk.com and copy or click on the RSS feed link to subscribe. Our Twitter handle is BikeTalkBFK. On Facebook, we are Bike Talk. You can become friends and join our group.